Rev up your engines!
Well, here is the information from the horse's mouth about the poor quality of Nissan builds. Paul Stubran, one of the viewers, sent me an email. I have a friend who works at the Nissan plant on the Altima line. He told me last week they had to shut the line down 4 times because they couldn't get the hoods to line up right because of a problem in the hardware issues and the screw holes being slightly out of line. Doesn't surprise me at all. The Nissan, the quality's been going down for decades. We're not talking about this is just a shot here and a shot there. Back when they were Datsun, they made great cars, and then Renault, the French company, bought them in 2000. Ever since then, their quality's been going down. They're always trying to sell the company. Look at that nonsense stuff they had with that Gosen guy who was the head of it, and then he ran away because the Japanese were trying to put him in jail. And now he's whining, they didn't treat me fairly, while he's hiding in Lebanon or wherever the heck he is in the Middle East when he snuck out in the box. You couldn't make this stuff up. I mean, if you made a movie like this and it didn't occur in the real world, people would say, what kind of fantasy nonsense? Who's making up this stuff? But the sad truth is, it's real. And they're making cars that people actually buy, and then they fall apart on them, and then they get mad. Do a little research before you buy any of these vehicles. That's for sure. When the guys on the assembly line are telling you this stuff, and this is when they're building them new. Imagine as they age what's going to happen to these things. I remember when Lee Iacocca died, right? And they had all these eulogies with the rich people. Oh, he was such a great businessman. He saved Chrysler, blah, blah, blah. Well, I know guys who worked on the Chrysler line when Lee Iacocca took over, and they hated him. They said all they wanted us to do was build them as fast and as cheap as we can so they could make money selling them. The quality was garbage. If you know anything about Chrysler K cars, one, they're the ugliest cars on the planet. But aside from that, mechanically, they were piles of junk too, and they fell apart. They went to front wheel drive, and they didn't know what they're doing. The transmissions would break all the time. But he's hailed as a hero for making money for Chrysler. You know, they never tell you the truth about any of this stuff. One time, Lee had a meeting. This is when he was with Ford. They go all over the place, right? With Richard Nixon. There's paper trails for this stuff, so it's not like somebody can make it up. There's actual paper trail of the letters and stuff they sent. He was saying to Nixon, you know, this safety stuff is killing our profit line. And he was talking about Ford that made these buses, and they wanted to put a big steel containment piece over the gas tanks on the school buses so they wouldn't start on fire if they got in a wreck. And Lee said, that cost us too much money. You know, they didn't care about the lives of the school kids. And then they did. Nixon and his administration gutted a bunch of these safety things after that. And then they praised him as a hero. You know, get the real story from people who worked for him, the data, the information that they shared with the president Nixon, and how these dirty deals are going all over the place, and these people aren't the saints that they paint themselves out to be. Come on, let's live in a real world here. Thank goodness there's still the internet that's open and people can talk about this stuff and not have to listen to the lies that these corporations are propagating on us, that we're all going to drive electric cars in 5 minutes and magically this electricity is going to be done and this big infrastructure of building power plants, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. No, and I don't think they're going to be building power plants anytime soon. They cost too much money. There's not that much profit in it for most of the corporations. They don't want to invest their money. And if the government starts doing it, we all know what happens when they start doing electricity. They don't know what they're doing. When they were doing a nuke power plant in Clinton, Illinois, when I lived near there was so much fraud and graft and corruption going on there. You don't want the government involved in that stuff. It's just foolhardy. People look at real things, don't listen to nonsense, make-believe things that the people who have all the money try to tell you to believe this. You know, no. Look at the real world and at least understand what's underpinning the nonsense they're trying to put out of us. Meditation, Stingay's music says, thoughts on a 2015 Nissan Juke. Bizarre looking cars, you know, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder. That's, you know, one thing or the other. But it's a Nissan, and it's 7 years old now. Cars go by manufactured years. It's 2022 now as far as cars are concerned. They're models, right? They aren't great cars. Now, let's say you're going to buy a used one. If a mechanic like me checks it out and the transmission and the engine are still working okay and you can get it at a decent price, it could be an okay car. They can often go over 100,000 miles relatively trouble-free. But on the other hand, you don't want to pay a bunch of money for one that's got 140,000 miles because it will fall apart. Unlike a Toyota or a Honda that might go 300, 400, 500,000, the Jukes won't go that far. I personally never mind because I think they look weird. But I mean, like I say, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. They just don't hold up as good as other Japanese cars do. Justin Yarrow says, Scotty, my 2018 Mini Cooper, sunroof is stuck open. The dealer says it's $5,000 to replace. Can't be repaired. There's a way to manually close the sunroof and bypass the electronic. Yeah, you know, those cars are so screwed up. My neighbor had one. She changed the battery. I had to reprogram the vehicle just so the sunroof would work correctly. I've got a machine that does it. I got all these fancy machines, right? But it costs $5,500, so most people aren't going to go buy it. You can get them manually closed. They run off of motors and stuff, and if you take a few things apart, they've got a motor. You can even physically detach the motor if you want, and then you can push the thing closed and just seal it shut and don't open it anymore. That just shows, as I've told for people for years, minis are piles of junk. That thing is a 2018. The sunroof is broken already. The sunroof on my wife's 20-year-old Lexus still works like a charm. If you're gonna buy one of those minis, you're buying junk. Don't waste your money on those things. And if you have one, don't use the sunroof, because it'll probably break open and then you'll have a real hassle. Roll the windows down and put the AC on. But don't use the AC too much, because it'll invariably break too, you know. It is an English car with German technology, and they're not that big in air conditioning, and they often break in those things. And your license says I got a 2015 Ford Explorer. The AC doesn't work. The compressor doesn't turn on. It's got 185,000 miles. What could be the issue? The first thing you want to do in any vehicle, if your car doesn't have cold AC, is put a set of gauges, or have somebody put a set of gauges on your car. Say you don't want to buy a set of gauges. Places like AutoZone, they loan you them. You give them your credit card. They put a charge against it when you bring the gauge back. They take the charge off. It costs you nothing. Put the gauges on. And if it's low on refrigerant, just add some refrigerant. All cars leak some refrigerant that have belt-driven AC compressors. Now, Toyota Priuses don't, because they have an electric compressor that works completely different. It's like your house compressor. But all the other cars run off of a fan belt, the drive belt, right? They spin a shaft. The shaft has a seal. Refrigerant can't get out. The seal has to leak a little bit. It has to leak so that the AC oil can get in there and be forced at a tiny leak to lubricate the seal. Because if it didn't leak and the seal was there, it would run dry. And then it would burn up within a few thousand miles and would all leak out. So they all leak. You could just be low on refrigerant. It's that easy enough. It is. Now, if it isn't, it could be your compressor's blown. Could be a lot of different things. But have the refrigerant checked first, because all cars over time lose refrigerant. And that's 7-year-old Ford. Probably needs refrigerant. If you never added refrigerant, that's probably what's wrong. Chad Fortin said, please answer. I need your help. I'm looking at an 05 Honda Civic Coupe with 180,000 kilometers here in Quebec for my first car. What should I look out for? It's a good choice, right? The only thing is, you want to have the transmission checked if it's an automatic transmission. Now, you're in Canada. More Canadians drive standard transmissions than Americans. 95% of Americans or 96% drive automatic, so it's probably an automatic in the United States. But maybe you're looking at a standard. If it's a standard transmission and it runs good, just go ahead and buy it. If it's an automatic, have a mechanic like me check it out. The transmission, this fancy computer, because sometimes they can have problems. They don't always have problems, and if it works great, hey, it's great first car to pick. Anthony Wobb says, Scotty, how many owners is too many owners for a used car? That's a good question. Well, I'll tell you, 13 is definitely too many. I had a customer in Houston, and he was the 13th owner of a Mercedes 300, and it was the biggest pile of junk you can imagine. Now, the thing was, the car was only like 14 years old. He was the 13th owner, and they kind of tip it off that it was a junker, right? Depending on the vehicle, I mean, if it was a Toyota Corolla, you know, and it ran good, or a Honda Civic, or a Camry and Accord, and it ran good, what do you care how many people owned it, you know? It's more the shape that the car's in, but of course, blows a whistle if there's a whole bunch of other people own the car, because why do they keep selling it? Most people don't buy a car and sell a car, buy a car and sell a car. No, it could be a reason that they got rid of it. It could have been wrecked, flooded, stolen, who knows. It is more important, though, to have a mechanic check it out than it is to worry about too many owners. You don't want to buy a car that has 12 previous owners and you're the unlucky 13th one. Probably 7 isn't too good either. Maceo Rodriguez. Scotty, what do you think of Ford Transits? I've seen high mileage ones that make me think they can last a while. I had a customer that bought one time, and he said, Scotty, can you find me the weather seal for the back doors? Because mine is gone, and they told me they're made in Turkey. And it's going to cost me like $395 for the piece of rubber. I said, well, you know, it's going to be hard to find something exactly the same. You might make one, insulation material from a hardware store or something, but the one that fits in that's made for it's going to cost you a bunch of money because they got to bring it all the way from Turkey, right? Now, they're decent vehicles. I've had commercial customers have them, and they like the vehicles. They can last quite some time. Guys like the Mercedes ones that are pros, they will last a lot longer than the Fords. Of course, they cost a whole lot more than the Fords. I certainly would not buy the Ram one, because the Ram little van that they make, called a ProMaster, it's a Fiat. It's a rebadged Fiat. I made a video on one the other day. The thing had 7,400 miles on it, and it already burnt oil, engine oil. I mean, those are garbage. You don't want to buy one of those. They say Ram, but it's a Fiat. It's a rebadged Fiat. It has nothing to do with Ram. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.